Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, and I am back with some Tyranids for you today. I'm actually going to be really trying to learn the Tervigon. As many of you probably know, Tervigon's been one of the worst warlords in the meta for some time now, and certainly the worst Tyranid warlord as well. But we just had a recent patch, and we had some real improvements to some of the cards. So I kind of wanted to throw together a few different builds with the Tyranids and really start to learn it. So let's have a look at the Tervigon, and let's just quickly remind ourselves of a few of the buffs that they've just received. So first of all, the warlord talent, the thing you get every turn, the brood progenitor. It used to cost 1 energy and now it's 0, and that's got significant implications. Not only does it mean you can absolutely cast it every turn, which is absolutely huge in itself. Like, it might seem like a really small thing. You think, oh well, it only used to cost 1 anyway. Yeah, but on turn 3 you wanted to develop a gene stealer, you couldn't play this. Now you can. Every single turn you can play it makes a big difference. So you can always gather your Termagants that it puts in hand. The other significant piece, which I talked about when I reviewed the patch notes, if you haven't seen that video, go and check that out on my channel. What I talked about there is the ability to, because this is a stratagem, then obviously it feeds into things like Sporosis and the 6-drop as well. Basically anything where you benefit, like Artifice, anything where you benefit from playing a stratagem. So it's absolutely huge, this is, guys, really massive. A couple of other things that are worth mentioning as well. The where's it gone? The 3-drop. The Hardened Biology. This card is ridiculously good now. I'm not saying it deserves to be in absolutely every Tyranid build, and as we'll see, it's in one of the 2 I'm going to show you today. But it is very powerful now. To get +2 armor and 2 health and be able to combine that onto Synapse is very strong. So that's come into play and really buffed it. And then there's a couple of more things as well, like, for example, the Winged Hive Tyrant got a really big buff, which is that on deployment, which is what Rally does, you basically, your next stratagem this turn costs 0, so you can combine that with things like the High Fleet Leviathan, for example, or the Hardened Shell that I just showed you a minute ago, and basically play and get value on the turn that you land the Hive Tyrant. So what I wanted to do is take 2 very different approaches to the Tervigon for a spin, and I want to share those decks with you. So the first deck that I have run is what I call the Good Stuff Swarm. So what I've done here is I've basically built a deck where it's not actually reliant necessarily on the Tervigon synergy, you know, the kind of gaunt spam, if you like, to win the game. So what that immediately does is it automatically gives us multiple win conditions, right? So if we use the gaunt spam, which we always know we're going to get late game with the Tervigon, then excellent, we've got that win con, but we don't need it necessarily to win games. So why don't we need it? Well, because we're playing a lot of the really solid Tyranny cards, so we can kind of play on curve quite nicely, and we can still kind of win by just building a better board and trading effectively with our opponent and taking over. So that's kind of, it's like a hybrid of the 2 that I've gone for here. So let's take a look at this list. So we run the double Encircle the Prey for the stealth, and the double flank for Predator Instincts. Nice cheap stratagems that are pretty good in almost any Tyranid deck. We run the Enhanced Organism as well, because one thing about Tervigon, even though he has got a slapping 40 health, is it is a control build, right? If we want to get into that late game where we can make the gaunt spam pay off, then we need to be able to heal, and Enhanced Organism can do that. It can also increase the health of your units, so it's not heal, so it will go above the starting health. So it's a great way of kind of getting units to stick to the board. Now we do run a single infestation node here. Usually that's to sort of try and target a couple of sort of key key synapse cards or things like that. We do run, of course, the Infinite Biomorphologies. This card's fantastic now. It feels so good at 2 energy. And sometimes what I've realised with this is that, unlike other Tyranid decks where you almost automatically play it on turn 2 if you've got it, In this deck, you may well wait until you've actually gathered a hand of Termagants and then play Infinite Biomorphologies, and that's often a lot better. And then you can put like armor on them, for example, or +2 health, or sometimes stealth. Or in a pinch, you can even put Vanguard. But what I've found that's really good in this deck is that you have to remember that if you put, if for example, a Termagant gets a buff from this, then the swarming units will get the buff too, right? So it's not just the first one that will get the armor, it's the other 3 or 4 that come out of the Tide ability as well. So it's incredibly powerful in this type of build, even more so. We run the double node beast, and we run obviously the overwhelming swarm. What we want to be doing here is kind of wait until sort of really about turn 7 or beyond to play this, so that we can really maximize our board. And of course, if we've played the High Fleet Leviathan, which means our troops cost 1 less, if we combine Overlord Swell, we actually get things for 0 energy. So that's the kind of really cheesy combo that we get in this build. We do run a single Gene Stealer. I found that, especially in this build where I've actually got pretty good units, the problem with the Gene Stealer is that we can often end up basically milling our own cards. So remember that every time you play Gene Stealer, you get another one at the start of the turn. But then if you're also playing your Warlord talent, you're getting a Tervigon at the start of the turn. If you go into overtime, that's 2 cards you're drawing. So I found that you've just got to be particularly careful. You can end up milling your own cards, and that's why I'm only running a single Gene Stealer in the deck. I am running 2 hardened biologies in here because we do have, like I say, we're trying to establish good bodies and a good board. So we've got the 2 Tyranid warriors because I want to make sure that I've got an early curve to be able to actually compete with our opponent's board. And the warrior's good for that. Is also another cheap Synapse creature that we can use later game. Of course, we've got the Ravenous Hunter, one of the most broken cards in the game. Spore Assist, as I say, I think it benefits really, really nicely and helps to keep up a bit of early game pressure. With the new Warlord talent costing 0, this is a really nice combo card for the Spore Assist. I run a single Toxic Entanglement. It's just for that sort of, usually that sort of mid-game period where we might not have got our big things down, and our opponent might surprise us with a big unit, maybe Chaos, maybe like an Ardshellgurk, or even an enemy early Termagant that gets the lead on us, something like that. Basically, Toxic Entanglement can just help us bring back. I don't know 100% whether it's correct or not. As I say, it's still early days, but it seems decent, so I'm playing 1. Tyranid Prime's fantastic in this deck. I mean, this is the kind of deck that Prime was made for. It's a good card anyway, but with the amount of Swarm we've got, this card can really go off, and can also be a good target for Infestation Node. Getting 2 Primes can be pretty good. I've actually tried the Tyranid Guard in this build, and I've actually found this card to be really important. Again, like wanting to get into the late game, wanting to build an effective board. Whenever those 2 things are part of your win con, then the Tyrant Guard you can't really go wrong with, because he helps defend both of those things. It helps you with both of those things. So really, really strong 5-drop. And of course, from the infinite biomorphologies, you know, if you get things like armor or extra health, these guards can be absolutely insane. I run a single Hive Crow, and I think this is just because I'm running quite a lot of 6-drops. Because I'm running the Neurotyrant, who again can do some really sick things, like combining with Enhanced Organism for a health boost, for example. And we also run the Double Screamer Killer, and the Double Screamer Killer is really good. What I found is, for example, when going second, the Screamer Killer, particularly with the Digestion Pool, can be a really solid turn, energy 4 turn. And also, Screamer Killer comes with 2 armor, so if it does get an infinite biomorphologies, it can be an insanely strong card to get rid of. And often our opponent will end up being forced to use hard removal on a Screamer Killer, which basically then means that you know, as soon as you start building big Termagants, they have free reign. Also with the Blast, it just means that, like, if you get behind on board, they have a bit of a chance to sort of help you catch up. It's just all around a really, really solid unit, the Screamer Killer. And then we run the High Fleet Leviathan. I mean, it should go without saying, but in a swarm deck where we're looking to kind of essentially, what we're looking to do is get into the end game and outvalue our opponent, right? Just keep overwhelming them with the swarm mechanic that we can just keep reproducing. Well, if everything costs 1 less, that just enables that game plan even more. So this is like a ridiculously powerful ability, but it's an expensive card. It basically means we take a turn off. Or with our last card, we have the Winged Tyrant. So obviously the dream is that we could play the Winged Tyrant on 9 straight into Leviathan for 0. So that is a pretty nice combo. So that's my good stuff swarm. As I say, it has those multiple wing cons in there. We still have things like the Ravenous Hunter. We can win by the Overwhelming Swarm combination, or we can just build the board and kind of outdo our opponent. Now the second deck that I want to share with you is one that Shimatsu himself came up with. I have to say I've struggled a little bit more with this one, but I am giving it a try because, you know, Shimatsu's a much better Tyranid player than I am, so if he thinks it's decent, then I wanted to kind of take it for a try. Now, what I believe we're trying to do with this kind of deck design is essentially go all in on the swarm strategy. Obviously, we still run the Ravenous Hunter, which can mean that just a single Tervigon can basically get massive and end us the game. But essentially what Shimatsu's done with this build is he's gone for lots of early game stuff, so really playing on tempo early to kind of like, we don't really care about all this stuff, but it's all about just throwing things in the way to help you survive to get into that late game where you essentially know you've got infinite value. So apart from the usual stratagems, we've got things like the Spore Mine in there. Now you might think, why would you play a Spore Mine? Well, actually, if you've dropped High Fleet Leviathan, Spore Mines are 0 energy. The same can be said for Ripper Swarms as well. So Ripper Swarms is actually a card I really want to test in my other deck, the previous one that I just showed you, because I really think that being able to play out the Full Tide for 0 after you've played that, or after you've played an Overwhelming Swarm, makes the Ripper Swarm really good. So it probably should be in the other deck as well, but it just enables you to play really super solid like early game. You've got things like the Adrenal Surges back in here, so again we can trade with something like a Stern Guard early if we need. He also runs the Hormagaunts, the Mucilid Spores, so lots and lots of early game. He does run the double Gene Stealers and the Augmented Ferocity again, which you could just play on your Warlord if you needed to clear. So lots of ways of kind of dealing with the early game and kind of just staying in the game, putting distractions out that your opponent has to deal with. You know, if they have to attack a Spore Mine, then they're not attacking your face. That's saved you 2 health already. So it just helps you get into the late game. And then he sort of runs one of the hard removal with the Toxic Entanglement and one Rapacious Hunger, so a bit of AoE, which we didn't have in the other one. And then nothing really big on the late game because we're just relying, as we said earlier, purely on the Tervigon producing big Termagants in the late game. So this is kind of like the general idea with this deck. Obviously we need to think about the sort of offense and defense stratagems. We're pretty much always going for the digestion pool on the defense. You can even use the pool just to play a extra Termagant if you want to get your swarm up quicker. In the other build, obviously we can use it on the good stuff swarm. We can use it to drop things like Screamer Killers still, or Neurotyrant, or Crone. So that's pretty much it for the defense. On the offense, I mean, things like the Eldar where we can get extra 1 energy, that's quite nice for this deck because obviously we want to get into the late game. So but you've just got to kind of think about like where it really makes sense, where it's actually giving you an advantage in your game. Alright, so let's jump into a few games. If you guys are already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for all the support. We're doing really well, and we've got some pretty exciting stuff coming up for you in the next few weeks, so make sure that you are subscribed if you're not already, so that you don't miss any of that content. And yeah, let's jump into a few games. So what I've done is I'm going to start with the the good stuff build that we've just talked about. So I want to show you a couple of games to kind of show you a couple of the different ways in which it wins. So this game we're playing against Uriel Ventris, so we've kind of kept the Node Beast, which we can obviously play on 2 or 4. We also have the Digestion Pool here, so we could play it out early, and I kind of always want to keep a guard when I see it against aggro to just help obviously slow them down a little bit. So we draw the prime and the chrome, so I'm going to just skip forward a little bit. So he obviously just drops the firstborn. Now we've got a few options here. We're obviously going to play our Warlord talent and get ourselves a Tervigon. What we actually do is hit face, and I think we actually just pass. Now, you know, there's an argument to say that that's a low tempo play and it's the wrong thing to do against Ultramarines, but as I say, I'm kind of like testing things out. That could well be, probably is a mistake. Generally speaking, that sort of is. If you're up against a tempo deck, you should probably be playing tempo. But what we've got here is the morphologies, so we go for the extra health, and obviously we can play that now to get the warrior out, and then we can just attack the firstborn. Okay, so he basically trades in his a bit of life from his Uriel and his Stern Guard, and ends up on the board. But we can obviously just go ahead and drop the Tyranid Prime now, which is buffed with the 2 health. So he drops the flanker, and he trades with the Chaplain's range attack so that he's still got 1 health left. Now, this is like part of the challenge, right? Because obviously we can clear that, but we take another 3 to face. So we kind of don't have a choice. We've sort of got to do it. There's no pings hit in this type of deck, so we've got to do it. But we're going to drop that big chunky guard that we talked about. Very glad that we kept that in our opening mulligan, and obviously getting the +2 health that we talked about makes this card really solid. That's why I really like this in the Tervigon build. Okay, so he's obviously lower on cards with Uriel now, because after the nerf, he now doesn't get the extra card. And he's trying to punch through a pretty big beastly card here, and yeah, no can do. So we actually just take it with the face. And I think what we're trying to do here, there's a lot of ways we could have played it there. We could have played the Neuro Tyrant. I think what we're trying to do though, while we got the guard up, is establish a Tervigon on board. Yeah, so establish a Tervigon on board that's kind of behind the guard. And I'm not sure about that. And he sort of comes back a little bit here. A really powerful turn with the Tactical Insight on the Impulsor. Of course, he gets the extra body out. And so again, another strange turn for us here, because we can't afford to play the High Fleet Leviathan. Would have been nice, but again, we're just in a bit of a tempo race here. He's only got 1 card left, so we just have to keep up, not fall behind on board. And I think what happened is I actually roped myself and ran out of time, so where I should have obviously traded there, I think I would have been in a commanding position, but I kind of roped myself. New deck, trying to learn the deck, made a mistake, and really let him back into the game here. Can even attack with the Impulsor. So yeah, we're right but down to 12 health here. So I think we just basically went for the flank on there to try and catch up really, just try and clear as much as we can off the board. And it basically left him with 1, and I'm thinking, well, he hasn't got many cards left, so it's not like we're worried about the double death from above just yet. But he's just going all in now and just looking for that kind of stratagem that he can play from hand to just kind of like end it. And he's out of cards, so you know, Uriel's nerf is kind of really showing itself here. And essentially what we've been able to do is just do the building the board with good cards and win the game. So this kind of like showing you that you know, you don't need with this deck to necessarily go to the late game kind of endless overwhelming swarm to win. So yeah, against the, you know, last season's #1 deck, we got the win there. Now I just want to show you another one, which is this time a little bit different. So to show you the same deck, but show you how this can play out quite differently. And again, I'll kind of skip on some of the boring parts. Okay, so we basically take the Tervigon, as we obviously will do every turn, because it only costs us 0. And do the same again. He just hero powers. So in this one we're actually just playing quite patient. He drops the Gretchen mob and the Grot Tower. Okay, so he goes wide. So now we drop the Spore Assist and we play the Warlord talent. And this is that combination that we talked about. Being able to play the Brood Progenitor for 0 with the Spore Assist helps us catch up, and obviously we just trade with a Grot. He plays hard as nails on those that are remaining. And his Warlord talent, so he can actually clear the Spore Assist here. And he can clear that as well by attacking with range. So now turn 5. Now I didn't know whether to drop the Tyrant Guard here. I actually felt like with him having a wide board, he could just chip away its range damage for free. So I actually wanted to go ahead and drop Tervigon. And I also wasn't sure about whether to use the flank here. But in the end, I think I decided to be a bit patient with that. So he uses his worst temper again. And I think he just trades in the little the little damage Grot, sorry, keeping up his 1/4s here, and then he drops a Storm Boy. So I went ahead with the play like to basically just try and sort of like oppose the board, almost acting like a soft vanguard, like he has to get rid of it. Obviously worst temper comes in quite nicely here, being able to kind of make himself a flying unit. But that's really helped us catch up there. So we can just trade in for 1 damage here, clear the board, and now it's turn 7. So we're going to play our biomorphologies, and I think we went with the armor. So we're going to just slap down the guard. Now we're like slightly ahead on board. So he's obviously going to try and trade just with the range damage there. But with 3 armor, he only did 1 damage from that. Isn't that insane? 1 damage from his 6-drop. Okay, so now we go in with the Overwhelming Horde. And we start dropping. And because these guys got the armor, like you can see here, even the Tide ones get the armor. And by the way, even if you played a non-armor one on top of one that has armor on the board, obviously you're building a bigger Tervigon that already had armor attached on it. So that's just something to note as well. Super powerful combination. Infinite Biomorphologies really is just superb in this deck. I'm not sure what that was for. Maybe it was just in case he could get rid of the other one, but he's going to well have got that board anyway, so fair enough. But he spent all his energy in Will of Gork, so we can kind of do the same thing. We can go kind of relentless again. Tervigon it up. Okay, so we decided to go a little bit wider. I think we're going to build up 2 mid-sized units. I think that's the plan here. And the reason for that is just to try and play around mucking about a little bit. Like if we'd just made 1 giant one there, be a bit susceptible to that. So now he's kind of decided, I think, that yes, this is a bit of a strange play, because he's sort of like It's almost like he wants to race me now, so he's kind of stunning this from hitting back, and then decided to go in with the bike, so he's coming into race. So I then drop the Hive Tyrant, and I actually just play the +2 armor plus 2 health, the new 3 drop, and because we got Synapse obviously onto 2 units, they all benefited. So now we just build an absolutely brilliant bot. So this, we got to see the Hive Wing Tyrant thing there. He goes with, look at that, he goes with the 1 in 3 chance on the mucking about. Super lucky. The other 2 are wounded as well, so he gets the armor. So we are like a bit behind, so this armor is obviously why he wanted to race. Got super lucky with the no mucking about there. I mean, that was insane. We're just going to drop the second guard and kind of bring another Tervigon out. And then we're just going to build this one up that isn't stunned, I think, and just smack him in the face with that. So we know he's already used a Will of Gort, we know he's already used a mucking about, but he got incredibly lucky on, picked out the Wing Tyrant, hit for 9 damage. And one of the good things about this deck is he really doesn't care much about the Grizzled Scarboy. Like the armor that Orks can put on the Warlord is cute when, you know, it's been hit by things that have like 1 to 5 attack, but when we have these 10 drops, 15 drops, like we don't care if it's only 14 instead of 15, do we? You know. So now he's coming out with his Orc Knob combo to try and clear the board. Obviously he can get rid of the guard, but he can't get rid of the 9 health 3 armor as well, and the 5 health 3 armor. So we're in a great position here, and what we can do is just basically build this unit up. We need 14, and then we can basically slap the Ravenous Hunter, but we have the extra 2 health, 2 energy, sorry. Yeah, so we built it up, leaving ourselves 4 energy, and then we can just slap the Ravenous Hunter on that for 36 damage. Well, 34 damage because he's got 1 armor. And double attack. Okay, so there we got it, guys. That is our kind of, that's our deck 1. That was the that was the good stuff swarm, right? So as we saw in those 2 examples, we've got like a way of winning just by building an effective board, and also we can kind of go into the late game and start playing the swarm. So what we're going to do now is have a look at Shimatsu's version, where we played more heavily into the swarm tactic, and just look at a couple of games. I did lose a few games to start with this deck, because I was really making mistakes and really trying to figure out what to do, and then start to get the hang of it a little bit. So let's just have a look. So the first one is actually quite a fun game against Gazghkull. This matchup's quite an interesting one. It can kind of go both ways. So let's see how this one went down. So I think we actually keep that hand. So we do. So obviously Gazghkull, we don't know whether it's aggro control, but it's, you know, I'm always thinking it's my control deck, my mill control, or a version of that now, because I'm starting to see that a lot on ladder. I think it's catching on. But what we can do is like we said in the deck guide bit, that we can just kind of like throw stuff out early, really, just to kind of keep up on tempo and distract from him hitting us in the face. So again, we're going to use our brood progenitor, and we're going to slap the rippers down just to put the tempo up, keeping hold of the digestion pool for now. So he's on 4 energy, so he can just drop the double storm boy. But the nice thing is, because we did this proactively, we can just trade really well with that one. Now I'm sure we're going to play the brood progenitor again, just building up that hand of Tervigons. Actually, we decide we're going to go and drop. Yeah, we're going to swarm that up. Drop 2. Obviously prioritises that. Clear that with his Gazghkull, and obviously gets a nice Scarboy there as well because he's got 2 wounded units. So it's a lot of health. So it's our turn 5. We just dropped the Gene Stealer in. Another Brood Progenitor. I think we just passed there because we obviously realise we're in a control match now. So we took it a little bit slower. Now, one of the things that we sort of talked about in the guide here is that we've got to be careful about kind of just milling our own cards, essentially. So we do go stealth there to threaten the board, which does protect us from this guy. So we should brood first. Always brood first before you play the infinite biomorphologies. And what do we go for? +2 health every time there, right? So go for the +2 health. Now we can obviously just make that guy huge to take out the veteran Stormboy, and we can still deploy another one, and we just decide to rebuff this guy up. Super wide board using the Gazghkull power as well. It's a nice turn. Now we actually don't play the hunger AoE in this. Oh no, we do. Sorry, Shimatsu's version. We do run 1 copy of it, so we could have drawn into that, but we didn't. So we have to actually think through a turn 8 play. Now I didn't want to. No, or did I? Yeah. So we went ahead and played the big High Fleet Leviathan. So I figured, like, even though we can't clear the board, we can kind of run it down a bit, and we're not under a massive threat, so that was a good turn to be able to do it. And then we're just going to stealth this up just to kind of try and protect it a bit. So he's drawing cards. Looks like both Stormboys and the hero power, the greatest war boss again. He's got some big grots on the table. And I think now he realises that he kind of needs to start pushing the damage. So he obviously hits us in the face, and we are getting low on health. Now this is what we talked about in the guide. Because we've dropped the legendary card, now things like Ripper Swarms are free. You know, Tervigons are super cheap, but we even go with the overwhelming hunger, and now we can essentially play our entire hand. So this is the absolute cheese combo. We could now put down our entire hand pretty much this turn if we want. Now, obviously, what we are thinking about though is playing around that those Will of Orks. So what we have to do is we have to threaten with a board that's good enough to kind of put us in the beatdown position and win the game, forcing him to use Will of Gork if he's got it, but not so good that we go all in that if he plays Will of Gork, we've then got nothing to play. So that's the balance that you're looking for. It's got to be good enough, but not all in. So you can see I've kind of gone with multiple threats, so it kind of plays around the kind of no mucking about option that he might have. But at the end of the day, notice that I've saved the gaunts that had the buffs from the extra health buffs from infinite biomorphologies. So I've not even used my premium ones, but this is a board he's got to deal with. Okay, so he brings down the Stormboy. So that kind of says to me that I either didn't go. I didn't I didn't threaten enough, and he feels he's got tools to kind of like make me get more out of me, or he just hasn't got it. It's one of those two. Now I know when I play Gazghkull, if I can not use Will of Gork and contain it with other tools, I will do first. So that's kind of like what I'm assuming. So yet again, I'm not going to go like too crazy here. I don't want to walk into a trap, and plus we've got this huge boy who's just hit him in the face for 13. So even with the 2 armor, it's like we're still doing 13 damage from that guy. So now we choose to use one of the buffed gaunts from the Infinite Biomorphologies, just to kind of say, well, if you have got that Willow Gaunt, you know, let's have it. Okay, so just speed this up a bit. So he brings down as many bodies as he can and unbridles carnage. But I mean, unbridled carnage is like, this is like the worst board he wants to be facing with unbridled carnage, because normally that's a really powerful play in previous metas, for example. But when you've got multiple high health units like this, it really isn't doing that much. So yeah, as you can see, even though he's trading with the Hormagaunt for free because he's attacking the range attack, it's so much health that you just can't do anything about it. And there you see we got the Ravenous Hunter. We can just pop that on the big boy, the Adrenal Surge, and we still had all these Tervigon. So you can see the value that we've got in hand. Like, we could have really dragged this into the ridiculous late game. We had 13 cards each left. He had 14 actually. But we found that Ravenous Hunter, so that gives us the ability to kind of like change the speed quite quickly. We don't need to kind of go out to fatigue, and we managed to win the game. So yeah, I do think that both versions are pretty interesting. Like, if you want to really practice the Horde version, then maybe try Shimatsu's. The only thing is, like, you know, if you don't draw High Fleet Leviathan, if you don't draw those, then it can be a little bit more, perhaps a bit less consistent, or at least slower, right? Because you can still play out the gaunts. It's just you can't really cheese them out big time. Or we've got the Good Stuff Swarm, where you've still got those kind of those combos in there, but you've also got other good units that you can kind of win the game with too. So as I say, guys, I'm just learning Tervigon. These are by no means like finalized lists. They're just 2 pretty good early lists that I'm doing pretty well with. And yeah, I definitely think Tervigon is very powerful now. Where exactly it is in the meta, I don't think we know exactly, but I definitely think it is in, if it's not in tier 1, it's in near the top of tier 2. So in other words, it's a highly competitive deck, and you know, some people are saying it's broken as well, you know, going as far as saying it's broken. I'm not sure. It might be, but I'm not convinced yet. I do think, though, in a way, it's kind of led to a bit more of a bipolar meta, because obviously Orks are a pretty good, you know, it's got some decent answers to what this deck is doing. I don't necessarily mean that makes Orks the favourite every time, but at least they've got some cards that can kind of answer these ridiculously threatening boards. So I think we'll see more Orks being played again. But yeah, it's interesting. Tervigon's at least going to get played for a while, so let's see. And what I'll do is I'll perhaps do a follow-up with how I'm getting on, maybe some more game examples and things. But let me know in the comments what you think, what are you running, what's working for you, what you'd like to see me build next and test. And yeah, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.